Well, I can give it a try. It's always difficult to talk about oneself in an objective manner, but I've had a career which started in Turkey. I had all of my secondary education and my university education in Turkey. And my ancestor was an Ottoman mathematician of the 18th century, well known. His name is Gelenbe Ismail Efendi, so he had the same family name, and he's a well-documented mathematician of that period, and he was also a reformer in the sense that the 17th and 18th century was a time of big changes in scientific education in Europe. And very quickly, those influences came to the Ottoman Empire, not because the Ottoman Empire wanted to do this, but because they were losing wars against the Austrians and as you know, with being in Croatia, you know, we're at the interface of Austria and the Ottoman Empire. And so the Ottoman Empire was losing wars, and they realized they had to modernize their technology. And they were very lucky because at the same time there was a French Revolution, and a lot of French officers who were aristocrats ran away from France and worked in the Ottoman Empire in that period. So my ancestor, the mathematician, had a chance to work with some of these people, and they started the first engineering school of the Ottoman Empire, engineering school in the Western sense. Which was called the Imperial School of Land Engineers. So it's essentially civil engineering, military engineering, fortifications, and so on. So they were involved in this reform. But he also published, you know, some 30 papers or whatever they called them in those days. So I have some scientific background in the family. Gelenbe. Erol Gelenbe. My childhood was not only in Turkey. So I was born in Turkey, I lived 5 years in Turkey, and then my father was a banker with a Turkish bank called Türkiye İş Bankası, and he was appointed to run a branch of the bank in Alexandria in Egypt. So I had the chance also to live in Egypt and to see the kind of environment in Alexandria, which at that time was very international. There were strong links with Turkey in Alexandria, as people traveling, as settling, and so on. So Alexandria was a very interesting experience for me from the point of view of understanding international relations, how, you know, different groups of people could live together fairly harmoniously and collaborate, and, you know, successful businesses and so on. So as a child, it was a very interesting experience. But from Alexandria, then we came back to Turkey, and in Turkey then I studied and finished my university at the Middle East Technical University, Orta Doğu Teknik Üniversitesi in Ankara. And after that, then I went to the US to get a PhD. As part of the scholarship, we were supposed to spend some time working for, you know, practical training and so on. So I was an assistant professor at University of Michigan in Ann Arbor, which was an interesting university and still is. In those days, the head of the computer science department, where I was hired to work as an assistant professor, was one of the actual signatories, actually the inventors, of what is known as the von Neumann machine. The von Neumann machine is the initial model of computation which has been implemented in today's computers. So the von Neumann machine is the basic template, the basic model, conceptual model for all the computers that we use. So it was very interesting for me to be in an environment where the person who was head of department was actually the first author of the first paper describing what we call computers today. So that was a revealing experience. Well, here we are in the Science Museum in London, very close to Imperial College, perhaps 50 meters away. And we're in the part that's dealing with mathematics and the information age. And what we have here is one of the first computers. As you can see, it's a mechanical machine. Everything is set up by positioning of different cogs, different ways of connecting mechanical parts, and then the calculation takes place with a hand motion that you're seeing there, and there's a possibility of printing out the results right here. Babbage's difference engine. So it was, as you can see, it was mechanical. So people set the computation they wanted to make, and they would turn the wheels and get the result out. When I was in high school, I was quite good in different subjects. And for a long time, I hesitated. I really wanted to do political science. I was very much interested in history. But I had a neighbor who was an astronomer, and he bribed me. He said he was an astronomer, but he felt that the future was electronic engineering. He really believed in this. And he said, he bribed me. He said, look, if you do electronic engineering, then I will send you to do an internship at Philips when you're a student. So he kind of bribed me into that. So because he said, you can go there and I'll organize this internship for you, finally I was convinced to go and do electronic engineering rather than political science or history, which was really something which I was very interested in. He was a neighbor, he lived next door. He was a scientist, and I didn't view his work as being particularly interesting, right? Because he'd go at night to look at stars. That's not a very interesting job. It's much more interesting to talk about history, political science, debate politics. It's much more interesting. But he bribed me into becoming an engineer. So that was a funny situation, in my life. This is the old Apple computer. This is one I've used quite a bit. In fact, I have myself one or two of these. This is the old IBM PC. The first personal computer, IBM PC, this is it. Again, it's a computer I've worked on. So it's amusing, and this is a French system. The idea was that there would be small computers like that in all the houses instead of telephones, and that this would allow people to look up, for instance, telephone numbers, to look up reservations. So it was kind of a special purpose system for home computing related to finding information that was useful for everyday life. And these were very popular for some time. There were a lot of these, perhaps millions, out across across France. This was before personal computers became common.
Because it was so small and so simple, it consumed very little power. And as a result of that,
they're showing mobile phones, but they're not showing the first ones. The first ones were really big, about this size, and they were not at all convenient. So you had to really carry a whole thing, and the only place where you could actually use them in a practical way was in a car. So you'd have one of those big things in the car, but you couldn't possibly have them handheld, carried around in your hand. It was just out of the question, just too big. Now today, for instance, when we take a very simple system that we use every day, which is the ATM machine to draw money, to withdraw money. So this is an ATM machine. We're familiar with these, everyone is using them. But in fact, these are two things. They are computers, and they are also systems that communicate. Because when you go in with your card, the machine has to communicate with your bank account somewhere at a distance and exchange data to see whether you have the right to withdraw money and how much you can withdraw. And then it has to make decisions locally based also on your cryptography, the code on your card, and your ability to combine the code that is already registered in your card and the PIN number that you put in. So those together, there's a computation, and it is decided if it is you, if you have the right. And then you communicate with your account, which is at a distance, through the network. So you have a lot of complicated computations, communications happening in such a simple system that is used every day. This is my university, you realize, Imperial College London. It's been here for a long time, since 1850 or the 60s. And as I come from there, I turn left exactly at this corner on my way home. I do this, I walk every day, and it's a walk of about 40-45 minutes. Depending on how fast I walk, it may be 50 minutes. And I try to do this twice a day. So every day I walk about an hour and a half, and during that time I have the opportunity to think about different problems and to raise issues and to solve problems in my mind before I actually do something about writing them down or explaining them to others. I had a chance in my third year to actually teach other students in the lab. So I was asked with a few other of my colleagues, my friends, we were asked to do teaching for the beginning students. And I all of a sudden discovered that if you have to tell someone something, if you have to teach, then you really start learning it very well. So I discovered that on the one hand that teaching was exciting, that telling people things was exciting, but also that it was a great way to understand things better. And I think that was the point which actually got me interested in an academic career. And then from there, when I started research, I was very interested in understanding what was going on. So my drive for looking at problems has always been to understand what is going on, to look at a situation and try to understand it, both theoretically in terms of mathematics, but also to see how it can be done better through practical approaches. So this has been always my curiosity. Why is it like that? How can we explain it? How can we make it better? And how can it actually happen in practice? This is the first book that I published. And as you will see, it's in French. It's printed in the old style. Before we were using electronic systems for publishing. And this is another book later, the second one. Okay, and this book actually has been quite successful because it was published also in Japanese. It was translated into Japanese and published in Japanese. So that was, in a certain sense, a success. This is the third one. that I published. This was published with Academic Press, a well-known international publisher. This is with John Wiley and Sons. It went through several editions. It's John Wiley and Sons is an American publisher. So this one was also translated into Korean. So it appeared in Korean language later. And these are other examples of books with different publishers. And this one is actually a more recent edition of this one. So this was the first edition. When you do multiple editions, usually you change, you add things. It's not exactly the same book. You correct, you modify, you modernize the book. So this is the same book as this one, except that this one has more material that did not exist when this one was published. And the publishers are different. So this is Academic Press, and this is World Scientific, which is a Singapore publisher. The environment has not always been simple. Okay? Why? Because when we were coming up in the lift, we stopped on the 6th floor with one of your colleagues, and we met some Iranian students who are here and who are well prepared. They speak very good English, but these young people have come here from their country, and probably when they came to London, it was the first time they left their home country. And you, of course, have had the same experience, leaving your home country, leaving your environment. So you have to solve a lot of problems, and not just the problems of education or of learning and so on. You really have to adapt. And this is generally a big challenge, and sometimes you have very little money, very few resources of all kinds. You don't know how to make the best choices for your day-to-day life, and all of that is a challenge. And all of those problems have to be solved, not just the learning aspect. As to the learning aspect, I've found that for me, the best environment has been one where I have not been told what to do, where I don't have someone who says, this is what you need to do, but who encourages me as I do things. So I think that's very important, to be encouraged, but not necessarily to be told what to do. But I know that this is very different from person to person.
Of course.
Some people need much more precise guidance, others prefer to be kind of left alone. I think when you are coming from a culture which is perceived to be inferior for various reasons, you are going to face also a substantial amount of discrimination. So, and you will feel this, and this is difficult too, because it's a discouragement. So you will feel that and you will have that, but you must accept it as being part of the game. Okay? If you don't accept that you are going to meet some form of discrimination, that you won't have the same opportunities as others and so on, if you don't accept this, then you just have to go back to your country and stay there, right? If you are away and trying to compete, then you have to admit that there are going to be positive sides and there are going to be negative sides such as those. So having said that, I wouldn't say that certainly my position was never prepared for me. I never got anything ready-made. I always competed for what I have, and I still do. So everything is based, I mean, if I'm still working here at Imperial College today, and you must realize that in my department, I'm the oldest professor, it means that everyone who is perhaps 6, 7, 8 years younger than me has, for various reasons, retired. Why? Because at some point, there's an effect of lower level of performance. So unless you perform at a very high level and continue doing this, you don't stay. Not only don't you go, but you don't stay. So not only don't you move forward, but you also don't stay where you are. So we are dealing in a world which is highly competitive, whether it's business or academia, whatever it is, it's always going to be the same. Nothing is ready. Everything is related to the effort that you put into it. It's about using robots to help patients feel more comfortable. So to create some kind of entertainment or some kind of interaction with patients who are there for a long time. And so these robots are taught to react to people and to answer and to do jokes and do something funny and so on. And this is one aspect. The other aspect that's being worked on is using robots to actually robotic chairs to move patients around. So that you give them autonomy moving around the hospital, and the robotic chair moves by itself. It moves the way around. So it's about that. I don't necessarily agree that all decisions should be taken on the basis of science.
Okay.
I think science is just one element. You have to think about, for instance, if you say, well, we want to do this, you have to, which is scientifically valid, you have to also consider what the social impact is, what it does to people's lives. Some things, for instance, you may want to do gradually. Let me give you an example. Right now, science is telling us the environmental problems are getting worse. Okay, and we see this in our daily experience. Okay, more air pollution and so on. Now, suppose that from a purely scientific perspective, you took the obvious solution. For instance, you tell China, tomorrow you cannot burn coal anymore, it's finished. Okay, but you can't do that socially, because then these people will not be able to work, they'll not be able to eat. So you must balance various things. Mm-hmm. So I think decisions have to be informed by science, but not based only on science. They have to be based on social considerations. The relationship between people with ideas and custodians, these are very socially dependent. You know, it also depends on the wealth of a society. Can a society afford certain things? And very clearly, when you concentrate, for instance, when you want to do research, when you want to develop new technologies, when you want to look into the future and how we might organize our societies and so on, you have to be able to spare some resources to be able to do this. You cannot do this if you have no resources. So these are things which depend on the stage of development of a society. It cannot be done everywhere in the same way. On the other hand, we do see societies who are very rich, but who do not do this. Why? Because they don't have the drive. They're not willing to work for the future, and they're not willing to work for very hard. In terms of Islamic countries, I would not want to generalize, because we have a very broad palette of Islamic countries, both in terms of their income and in terms of their contributions in science and their level of education. So it's very, very different across the different countries that I'm familiar with. Some countries, let me give you an example, such as Algeria, they have resources and they have invested a lot in education, for instance, and in very applied research. This is one example. Other countries which have a lot of resources have not. And this is not related to means or being poor, etc. It's really related to making an effort. My advice is that people of a country should work hard. Some of these countries have tried recently some social transitions, the example of Egypt, the example of Tunisia, more or less successfully. Others have continued in a given direction. Now, if you look at those countries, generally you will see all of those countries, except for Libya, I think, have a really good set of universities, across this area. So I think that there is, for instance, in this set of countries, you have an interesting combination. Now, then you can look at other countries, right? And you can look at Turkey, Iran, which are a little bit similar in a certain way in terms of social development, technological development. Well, by and large, they do very well, because people are willing to work hard. Okay, they're not particularly rich countries. The case of Turkey is quite interesting. Turkey basically doesn't have any natural resources. It doesn't have huge minerals, doesn't have oil, but technologically, industrially, it's quite successful at its level. It exports cars, it exports a lot of technological products. And it's basically the result of hard work, education, hard work. Iran, although it does have oil, it has gas, so that's wonderful. Still, it has a lot of local effort, which produces results and leads to industry and technological development and so on. So you have a variety of situations, and then you have countries like the Gulf countries, which are very rich, okay, but unfortunately, we have to say it, they don't produce anything technologically interesting, not because they don't have universities, they have universities, but the local people are not willing to put the effort. There isn't like an understanding. People haven't understood that they really have to work hard. This one, for instance, represents an invitation to a lecture to the 200 best science students in China from Chinese high schools. And this was organized by the Li Ka-sheng Foundation, very well-known foundation. And they did this in Shantou University in China. And as a result, a small group of people, 4 of us went, mostly from the US, myself from the UK. We went and lectured to these students to inspire them to develop careers in science and in technology. So this is the signed presentation from all the students who attended. These governmental awards, such as this one, for instance, is signed Jacques Chirac, is the award of Office of Merit, and you see it sitting here. This award is a merit award in the sense that you have done service, useful service in society, and you get it for this, okay? Usually these awards have different degrees. So this is the 2nd degree award, you see it, and in that case, it is signed by President Mitterrand, so different times, different historical times. So these kinds of awards, another one, again from France, these are French awards, again from France, now it is signed François Hollande, a different period, it is the Legion of Honor. And it is Grand Officer, Grande Ufficiale, Grand Officer of the Order of the Star of Italy. So this is for people who have helped Italy a lot exceptionally. Foreigners, usually given to foreigners who have had a very high contribution to Italian development or to things that are happening in Italy. And these awards, for instance, this was from 2007. Now, these are governmental awards. My first award was actually when I was a student. When I was finishing my university in Ankara, at the Middle East Technical University, I received the Best Research Award, and it is signed here. This is my first research award as a student. In fact, it's very interesting because the person who signed this is Mustafa Parlar, Dean of Engineering in Ankara at that time, and then when he died, they did a foundation in his name, and I received the Science Award of his foundation. So it's interesting to see, this is when I was a student, this is much later, when I had already worked for many years. So this gives you a general idea of these kinds of things. I met my wife in New York. She was then studying at the Juilliard School, which is one of the best music schools in the world. And she is from Ankara, from Turkey, and actually she and I went to the same high school. Although when we were in Ankara, we did not know each other. So we met in New York, which was kind of by accident, in the same place where we were staying, because we were both staying at International House in New York. She has been a musician, a pianist, and actually she is currently a professor of piano at the Trinity College of Music in London.
Yeah, so look, I think it's a great conference, it's a great event.
This is my son, and he's very well known for working in technology startups. Our son, Sami Erol Gelenbe, he studied as an engineer. He did an engineering degree. He started off, first of all, in the US at Duke University and got a bachelor's degree, very good, with excellent marks. He was top of his class. And then he went to France and got a French engineering degree as well at École Centrale in Paris. École Centrale is the engineering school which graduated Eiffel, from the Eiffel Tower. Everyone knows the Eiffel Tower. École Centrale is a famous school where a lot of well-known engineers graduated. And after that, he went to New York to Columbia University, where he got a master's degree. His real interest is not really in engineering per se, you know, as doing engineering. He's very interested in technology, but he's especially interested in helping starting companies in the technology area. And that is his main activity. So now he has a fund and he is supporting various startups. He has done some startups himself, and then he is now helping others do this as well. So he's working with companies in different countries. In Turkey, he started some companies in Turkey. He started some companies in the US. He's interested also in Bitcoin, which is a new cryptocurrency you've heard about. So he does all these things that I know nothing about. He seems to be happy about it. I'm sometimes worried, but it's fine. You know, everyone has their own way. One of the secrets of the success of the United States is the fact that it's a country of immigrants. So it's successive generations of immigrants who are all leaving their home countries because they hope to be more successful there. So they have the drive. Even the fact that they have traveled so far into something they didn't know about is a way to show that these people are going to work hard and make efforts and so on. And you see this across all the communities in the United States, this happening. Okay? I think what we call the Muslim Golden Era was very similar. Don't forget that this was happening about 2 centuries, 1, 2, 3 centuries, 4 centuries after the start of Islam. A lot of these people were immigrants. Okay, they were joining the system. They were entering the system, bringing their drive, bringing their push. And the same is the military expansion across from Arabia into Central Asia, into Iran, Afghanistan, towards India, all the way across North Africa, into Europe. These people had a huge drive. They were like the immigrants of America. Okay? So I think we're talking about situations whose explanation is not necessarily what we would think it to be. I feel that it's very much the transition, the transformation that created this golden era. So people willing to work very hard, going from one culture into another, having a common way to talk, to act, and so on. And of course, profiting also from the presence of an older civilization, which was first the Greeks in all that area, then the Romans, because they inherited, then Byzantium, and they were coming on top of that, but with a new drive. So I think that was a lot of it. And I think I'm back to my old idea that there's only hard work to do this. I don't think there's any magic. I think everyone has to understand that hard work, selectivity, quality have to drive whatever we do, and then we will be successful.
Excellent. And how do you see Iran, for example, in this aspect of science? What do you feel? How is Iran performing?
Now, I think Iran is performing very well in all scientific aspects. They have great universities like Sharif University, internationally worldwide known. Their students are excellent. For instance, I've been so much surprised, not just in their scientific training, but I've been so much surprised by the quality of their English. You know, these people who have never been outside of Iran, they speak perfect English. I call them to do telephone interviews with the students, and they have no problem. They express themselves very correctly, much better than, say, a French person would speak English. So they have a very good educational system. Based on that and the fact that they work hard, I think it's just a matter of not getting stopped. Because you can also have external stopping effects, which may be also political, right? And we've seen this happening in many, many countries, many parts of the world. You know, colonialism, for instance, of various kinds, has not always been very positive. Take the case of India. India was, before British colonialism, it was one of the richest countries in the world. After British colonialism, it was the poorest country in the world. So there are external effects that you have to be realistic about. As long as the external effects are kept in balance, I think a country like Iran is obviously successful and will be even more successful. in my lifetime, and in yours as well, all of us have the same experience. We've had overall better and worse periods. Okay? I think that all of us have seen since, I'd say, since the first Iraq war, everything getting worse. Not necessarily economically. I think we've all grown wealthier. The countries where we live, where we're lucky to live, have been doing better. But we've seen for the last 20 years a lot of misery. And the most recent example is Syria, Libya, before that Iraq. Iraq's still going on. So we see a lot of misery with international impact. International impact because this creates terrorism where we live, violence everywhere, and so on. So I think if I have a wish, it's to see this go away. And I think this can go away if there is less use of force. If we admit that things have to be resolved by less conflict. Okay. The opening event in all of this was the first Iraq War, which really messed up a large part of the Middle East. So I would hope that this period goes away.
I want you to give advice to students, to all of the students, in fact. What should they do to become like you one day?
Yeah, they have to, in simple terms, I'm repeating things I've already told you. First of all, they have to be willing to work very hard and they have to accept failure. So failing is okay. You just have to, when you fail, you find the way forward. You look for a better way. You search for alternative ways to do things. So keep going. Secondly, think about what you do not by yourself, but think of yourself in a society of other people working in similar things. Don't worry that someone is speaking Chinese, another one is speaking English, another one is speaking French, another one is speaking Italian. Try to connect to these people. Try to work in a community and exchange. This is very important in science because you never know where your friends will be and who is going to help you. So try to be open, and of course it's also much more fun because if you are in a community of people, you don't get bored, you exchange jokes, you can meet friends. So try to combine your own work, which is going to be very effort-oriented, very search for a better way and working very hard, but at the same time, don't drop out all the rest of the world, you know, be well connected. So I think those are the two things that I would recommend to people. Don't be too centered on yourself or on your own environment. Be open across the world and at the same time be willing to insist very hard and be very focused.